There's a 3,000-year-old biblical mystery that goes back to the sands of Sinai, and yet which has determined the exact date and hours of the greatest financial collapse in American history.
Every 7 days in ancient Israel was a Sabbath day, a day of rest. But what people don't realize is that every 7 years was a Sabbath year, a sabbatical. That's where we get it from. In Hebrew, the word is Shemitah. That was the Sabbath year. It was a year of rest. There was no sowing or reaping of the land. There was no buying or selling of the fruits of the land. It was an economic rest that covered the entire land. On the last day of the Shemitah, something interesting happens. On that last day, all the nation's debts are wiped out. All credit is wiped out. The nation's financial accounts are, in a sense, wiped clean. Now, this last day was called Elul 29, or the 29th day of the Hebrew month Elul. Elul 29, debts wiped out, credit wiped out, accounts wiped out.
The Shemitah was meant to be a blessing, but when ancient Israel drove God out of its life, the Shemitah becomes a sign of judgment.
So what does this have to do with America? America is not under the law of Moses, but the Shemitah is a sign of national judgment on such a nation. The key of the Shemitah is this 7-year mystery, this 7-year cycle. So when was the first shaking of America? The first shaking was 9/11. That was 2001. When was the second shaking? The collapse of the American economy happened in the year 2008. That's a 7-year cycle between the two shakings. When in 2008 did this economic collapse happen? Happened in the month of September. That's 7 years to the month of 9/11. When exactly? It happened the second week of September. That's 7 years to the week of 9/11. And then it gets even more eerily exact. Because what was the greatest moment of that collapse? It happened at the end of September. It was September 29, 2008. Wall Street collapses. That morning, they go to Wall Street to ring the opening bell, and the bell refuses to sound. Even Wall Street took it as an omen. That day is the greatest collapse in American history.
Billions of dollars of the nation's financial accounts were wiped out in a single day.
The greatest point crash in American history took place on the biblical day of the Shemitah. It happens on the exact 29th day of Elul. And even more mind-boggling, if you go back 7 years from this crash, because it's a 7-year mystery, and it brings you to September 2001, that's the month of 9/11, but it's also the month of something else. That same month is the month of the other greatest crash in American history up to that day. It was actually caused by 9/11. It happened September 17, 2001. Now that's 7 years within 2 weeks. But it gets even more eerie or amazing. Because if you strip away the Western calendar, what you're left with is that other greatest crash in American history took place on the exact same biblical day. The day of the Shemitah. The day of Elul 29. The two greatest crashes in American history up to those days each happened on the exact same biblical day, and happened on the exact day that just happens to be appointed to strike a nation's financial realm that is under judgment, that is driving God out of its life. Between the two crashes are 7 biblical years down to the day, down to the hours. There's no one on earth who could have orchestrated all these things, because every transaction, every investment in the world is part of this equation. Only the hand of God. And so the warning is that America's blessings, America's prosperity, are from God. If America turns away from God, if America defies God, those blessings will be removed. Mystery.